Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Pop quiz.
Yeah?
What do Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Google CEO Sundar Pichai, IBM CEO Arvind Krishna, Ambassador Nikki Haley, Congressman Ro Khanna, and former Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy all have in common?
They're all Indians.
They're all Indians in America.
That is true.
And they're all mentioned in Meenakshi Ahmed's new book, though they are not all profiled in the book, which we will discuss. The new book is Indian Genius, the Meteoric Rise of Indians in America. Meena joins us from Los Angeles. Meena, welcome. I should note, full disclosure, Meena is my good friend's mother-in-law, but we would have had her on the program anyway, because this book is awesome. I do want to start with numbers. We're Bloomberg. We like data. By many measures, Indians are among the most successful group in the U.S. They've got a higher median income. They've got a higher median educational achievement. They've got the lowest poverty rates and the highest rates of educational attainment among Asian groups. Meena, what do you attribute that to? Why are Indians in the U.S. so successful?
Well, I think there's several reasons, and of course, one of the contributing factors is what you just mentioned. But one is the acquired, one is their acquired ability, their skill sets. Many of the Indians who have come to this country have specialties in STEM. And, we are living in a world in an era of tech domination. So those particular skill sets lend themselves to the needs of the country. And so they've risen well and done very well. If you look at Silicon Valley, a third of the startups are all run by Indians. They were all founded and their CEOs are Indians. If you look at the medical field in this country, 1 out of every 12 doctors in America are of Indian origin. That's quite a astounding number. So, that's one of the reasons they're highly educated, but they're highly educated in the STEM fields. When President Johnson passed the Medicare Act in 1965, you all of a sudden had 20 million people who had access to healthcare, but the hospitals didn't have the doctors. So, and at the same time, the AMA had suggested that medical schools reduce the numbers of medical students. So where were the doctors going to come from? And at the same time, you had the Vietnam War. And so a lot of wounded people coming back and a lot of doctors going out to help people in the Vietnam War. So they went and recruited overseas. And so Indians were coming in who were highly trained from very good institutions in India. So they recruited people because people from Europe weren't coming in anymore. They weren't immigrating to the US. So you get these Indians, Filipinos, and other people coming in with these skill sets. And then you had Silicon Valley, of course, where the military was investing massive amounts of money into technology, because after Sputnik in 1965, there was this Russian arms race during the Cold War. And so you had a need for engineers, and there was a shortage of engineers. So you had, and after 1965, they relaxed the rules.
Right.
So engineers could come in. Where were they going to get these engineers? European engineers weren't willing to come.
Yeah, it's so interesting. If you look at the folks in your book, Meena, how do you define the connection between all the people you do feature in it? Some of them, such as Nikki Haley and Ro Khanna, were born in the United States. Some others, Adobe's Shantanu Narayan and Microsoft's Satya Nadella, they were born in India. So how did you kind of figure out who to profile?
Yeah, so what's really interesting, if you look at, Satya Nadella, Shantanu Narayan, the CEOs of Adobe, Microsoft, Sundar Pichai of Google, these people, what's remarkable is they rose to the top within one generation. That's what's so unusual about these Indian Americans. They've done it in one generation. A lot of these people have specialized in STEM. And Indians are sort of obsessed with educating their children in STEM. Um, the people who attained economic security in this country and their children were born here, like Nikki Haley, Will Khanna, and Neil Katyal, who were profiled in my book, they grew up with some sort of economic security and they wanted to give back. They followed a different path and many of them became lawyers and they went into other fields. And a lot of them went into politics. 99 Indians ran for public office in 2020, in the 2020 election. That's quite a remarkable amount. We have now 6 congressmen who are in origin in the U.S. today.
Well, I want to talk more about the people
on the rip. In this recent election, you had 2 people. You had, Vivek Ramaswamy on the Republican side, and you had Kamala Harris on the Democratic side, and they were pretty prominent contenders. And Nikki Haley, who was sort of the last person standing against Trump.
So what do you make of, so it's probably a good segue to talk about some prominent Indian Americans who are in this administration and adjacent to this administration. You mentioned Vivek Ramaswamy. There's Kash Patel. There's Second Lady Usha Vance. How do you look at this administration with regard to policies that may affect this community?
Well, you're talking about Trump's immigration?
Yeah, the H-1B issue mainly. If you look at some BBC reporting, for example, Indians account for more than 70% of H-1B visas. And this was a big issue a couple months ago that really divided people in this country. What's the risk if U.S. immigration becomes more restrictive?
So, this is going to be an issue. And as you said, 75% of the H-1B visas have been given to Indians, and the Chinese follow at 13%, which is quite a huge, gap. And everyone in India is very concerned about this particular issue. There's a split in the MAGA community, as you probably know, between the sort of Stephen Millers and Bannons who feel that white people built this country, and we don't need, these people are taking away jobs, and we do not need them. We can find Americans to do their jobs. And then there's, the Elon Musks and the tech bros who really feel, no, how are we going to compete with China and the rest of the world if we don't have highly skilled people? And we need skilled people to come in. I mean, let's we can restrict immigration, but let's keep getting skilled people coming in. And Trump seemed to side with the Elon Musk view. I think let's just look at the evidence. Every immigrant community that has come into this country has brought their skill sets. It's just not true that only white people built this country. African Americans, I mean, the country went to war. They had a civil war. Have they forgotten? Because they were so critical to the economy of the South. So, the country was built on the back of the labor of African American people. So, if they restricted, Latin Americans from coming in, I think, you'd have sky high inflation because all the fruit and vegetables would be rotting on all the fields, and people aren't willing to do those jobs.
Right. Many would argue that it's the diversity of this nation and the open door policies that have enabled it to really succeed economically. If I may, because we only have about a couple of minutes left, Meena, there is some prominent Indians that are not in your book, and most notably, at least for us in our world here at Bloomberg, because we talk about Alphabet and Google so much, Sundar Pichai of Alphabet. You mentioned him in the book, but you decidedly didn't profile him. And you argue in the book that, quote, although he is known for his management skills, he has fallen short. We just have a couple of minutes here, but I'm just curious about why he wasn't included and your thoughts here.
Sundar Pichai is very smart. He's a wonderful human being, and I don't want to take any of that away from him. But I was looking at people who were visionary and transformative in their fields. And if you look, when OpenAI landed, it shook the market in the way that DeepSeek has shaken the market. And Satya Nadella actually responded with great vision, I think. And he not only bolstered Sam Altman, but when Sam Altman was, that when the shakeup happened and there was a fallout, he actually offered Sam Altman an alternative to set up at Microsoft, and he stabilized the whole situation in the market. And I think he had great vision in the way he had, first of all, invested in OpenAI, and then secondly, when the blow up happened, he actually stabilized everything by providing them with a home, and then everything got stabilized. What did Sundar Pichai do? He got so anxious, he kind of ran to the founders and asked them to come back and help them out. And I don't think you run, to mommy and daddy and then say, come back, help me, I need you, if you really are visionary. So that sort of made me think. And the other thing is DeepMind DeepMind really is the sort of the innovative part of Google, and that's run by Hassabis, right? And I'm not saying that Sundar Pichai hasn't done wonderful things, but I'm looking at who's the visionary here.
Right.
And in my mind, it's been Satya Nadella.
Meena, it's a great place to leave it. It's a fantastic book. Indian Genius, The Meteoric Rise of Indians in America is out now. Meena Ahmed is the author. Connor Sen, you know him from Bloomberg Opinion. He wrote and from our program too. He wrote a column earlier this month about Gen Z's job recession. He cited some Harris poll data from a survey with Bloomberg News that found that 80% of Gen Z members in white collar roles say it's difficult to find a better position than their current one. So more difficult.
That's a lot.
It's at least 11 percentage points higher than other age cohorts. So it shows the struggles that this generation is facing as they are early on in the workforce.
All right, curious what Steve Preston has to say about all of this. He is CEO of Goodwill Industries International. They call themselves the, quote, largest nonprofit provider of jobs, training programs, and career services in North America. He also served in the George W. Bush administration. He was the SBA administrator and the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. And he joins us from Washington, Tim, on this Thursday.
Steve, good to have you back with us. It's been a couple of years since we last connected. I know that this data point is going to resonate with you because you teamed up with McKinsey to do your own survey about Gen Z. And from my understanding, it really kind of gels with what Bloomberg News found with Harris poll. What did you find?
Well, we found a number of things. I mean, in a lot of ways, Gen Z's come under a bit of attack of not being motivated or not, being excited about the job market. But we really found something pretty different. We found by and large, most Gen Z people are looking for training. They're 2.5 times more likely to pursue some kind of training and education. And when you dig deeper into their attitudes, they're actually kind of scared. They're really worried about job security. A third of them don't know that they'll ever be able to retire. And 70% told us they don't believe that they'll ever own a home. So think about that as a 22 or 23-year-old, and you're looking into your future and you're just kind of saying, oh my goodness, there's not a lot out there for me. But they're pretty motivated.
Are they right? Based on kind of the metrics that are out there?
I think that's a great question. And when we look at the housing market and some of these other things, you can imagine that it feels pretty daunting. But I think the other thing we're seeing is they don't see necessarily understand the pathway to get to a better place. I think if you're somebody who's gone straight to college and you've gotten an engineering degree, it feels a little bit different. But the majority of a lot of these people just don't know how to find the right training, want to get ahead, don't know how to find the right job. And if they can connect with those resources and get the right kind of support, they'll find themselves on a fundamentally different pathway. And that's what we want to make sure that these people can experience, is get a vision vision for what they can do in their lives and be able to get the resources and get the support they need to get on that pathway.
Remind everybody why this is so important to Goodwill Industries, because I think a lot of people understand Goodwill as a place, the thrift store and the thrift store network that you have. That's only part of what funds your mission.
Yeah, so our mission for 125 years has been about helping people with deep challenges in life get on their feet, get the support they need, and move into the workforce so they can take care of themselves. So in addition to those 3,300 stores, we have 600 job centers around the country where we do a lot of this kind of support. In addition, we do a lot of job training, obviously, within the stores themselves. So we focus very hard on young populations, on people who've come out of incarceration, on people in lower wage categories, to say, how can we help you get from where you are today to a place where you can get a stable job, move forward in your life, and take care of yourselves and your families? That is what Goodwill is all about. And we love that you know the stores, because we want you to shop there and donate there, because much of what is generated in those stores funds this important mission. But what we're all about is those people.
Hey, speaking of funding, got to get your thoughts on Doge, because you do get government funding. We did learn from your team when I was asking about this that you get more than $600 million network-wide from different government sources, which includes the federal government. Is that at risk?
Yeah, it's at risk for us, and it's at risk for all nonprofits. And what we're hopeful is that when the federal government gets through this process, they'll understand that workforce development programs have a very meaningful impact on the lives of people. And in fact, one of the things about Doge, and one of the things about what we're talking about here, is people are very focused on the cost to the government of different programs. But if you think about what it costs for somebody to be incarcerated or be going through the justice system, when you think about what it costs for them not to be working or not paying taxes, or for their families to need all kinds of support, the value of helping those people move into a place where they can take care of themselves, where they don't need public assistance, where their children have more resources to move forward in life. I mean, the value to all of us financially is enormous. Now, we like to talk about the value to human beings because we care about it, but the financial value is huge for all of us. And I think these are issues that every one of us should care about and be able to get behind.
Look, I don't disagree. And I think a lot of people would agree with you. It doesn't seem like, though, to be honest, that a lot of folks in Washington get that message. I mean, we can look at it from a public health perspective, too. There's a question asked, okay, why does the United States support funding of disease and outbreak tracing in parts of Africa? Well, it's because we don't want these diseases to come to the U.S. If Ebola does come to the U.S., it ends up costing a lot of money and it can cost lives. But it doesn't seem like that connection really exists right now in Washington. I think a lot of people would argue.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of challenges here. Number one is it's easy to look at the cost of a problem, but it's harder to look at the full value of the solution. And in many cases, the full value of the solution is significantly greater. Another thing I think is important for all of us is our companies are looking for talent. We need to have a competitive workforce. It's the most important asset our country has. And by providing the support for people who are what I would call underemployed or not in jobs that really reach their potential, and helping them move into some of those more important jobs to our economy and to our growth, we actually fuel the economy in ways. And so this is a very strategic thing. I think everybody gets their head around the importance of opportunity for people, and everybody gets excited about people who are looking to move forward in life and actually realize their dreams. But the pathways there can be kind of complicated. And a lot of times, if we're looking at people who are in lower income groups or have other kinds of challenges, we don't always believe that it's possible. But it is possible, because all of the data show that when people get the right kind of support, we see remarkable transformations in their lives, and it's good for everybody.
Is Washington listening to you?
Well, right. I will tell you, we have found across different administrations, irrespective of party, that when it comes to issues around opportunity and when it comes to issues around work and helping people get skills, almost everybody listens. people don't always agree on the right way to get there, but everybody listens. And I think right now we're in this place where things are happening very, very quickly. And I think the administration is trying to make impact in a lot of different areas at the same time. But I think when things slow down a little bit and there's time to have these conversations, I'm very hopeful that we'll see a lot of people who are interested in moving forward in a lot of the same ways that we talk about. And I think that's for both parties.
Well, we definitely look forward to hearing more from you on that front as well. Steve Preston, thank you. Chief Executive Officer of Goodwill Industries International, joining us from Washington, D.C.
I don't think, Steve, we've spoken since 2022. So,
it's been a while.
It's been a while, but come back sooner next time. We look forward to chatting with you again. Irvine, California. It's in Orange County, south of L.A., inland from Newport Beach. You can call it a company town, but not in the way that you might think. One company owns about 75% of the apartment units in the city, and almost everything else, from shopping centers to office spaces to a golf club, solar panel installation business, and yes, Carol Massar, even the community newspaper.
It's wild. We're talking about Irvine Company and the secretive developer behind it, who's the wealthiest real estate developer in America with about $17.4 billion to his name, according to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index.
Michael Waters and John Gittleson write about this for Bloomberg Businessweek. Someone named Donald Brennan. Michael Waters is a Bloomberg Businessweek freelance contributor. He joins us from New York City. Check out his story on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com/Businessweek. Michael, good to have you on the program. Who is Donald Brennan?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So Donald Brennan is the CEO of the Irvine Company, and he is one of the wealthiest real estate magnates in America. And essentially, the Irvine Company historically was owned by the Irvine family. So they essentially consolidated this vast plot of land in Orange County. At its peak, the Irvines owned 100,000 acres of Orange County land. And eventually, they decided to convert that land into a city and develop housing on top of it. And so the Irvine Company was born out of this inherited land. And starting in the 70s and continuing to the 80s, when he took full control, Donald Brennan, who is this developer from the area, entered the orbit of the Irvine Company, and he started out as a partial owner of the new company, and eventually took over and took this company that had been created by the Irvine family and pushed it really to new heights under his leadership.
Donald, do I want to live there? I mean, no cannabis shops, no cemeteries, no almost
What do you need a cemetery for? What do you need a cannabis shop for?
Almost no above ground cables. You've left the city when you start to see telephone poles. One person that you guys talked to for this story, a professor, driving through, she says, once in a while she'll make a turn and there's this very spooky feeling like, oh my gosh, where am I now? Because it all looks the same. I mean, do we want to live there?
I mean, it depends on, I think there's a lot of different opinions on it. But it's certainly the result of meticulous planning. And I think that's why, the Irvine family, when they own the company, and now Donald Brennan as the owner, think about the smallest details. I mean, Donald Brennan himself is known to drive around the city and look at his property and ask for really specific aesthetic changes. And you really feel that in the city. Everything is just the way that someone thinks it should be and is. Many people I spoke to described it as variations on boring. I think other people just feel it's very clean. You know what I mean? It's different perspectives, but it's the result of this really phenomenal sort of top-down control over so much of the city.
So Donald Brennan is 92 years old, and he's got no announced successor. You guys describe him as the one-man HOA. What happens when he's gone?
Yeah, no one knows. The Irvine Company says they have a plan for what happens after Brennan. Nothing has been announced, and some of the people we spoke to, are just really not sure what's going to happen. Certainly, it will be consequential for the city of Irvine. So while the city of Irvine, they obviously have their own city council and governing structure independent of the company, the Irvine Company has such a large amount of control over just housing and commercial real estate in the city that, who runs the Irvine Company really has a big effect on what the city will look like. And, this is an issue around affordable housing, for instance. Like, the new mayor of Irvine, who just came into office this year, wants to negotiate with the company to cut rents on housing. It's a very expensive place to live. And, so whoever is in control of the Irvine company will have a big downstream impact on the city itself. But, as of now, Donald Brennan is still in charge. He still has the top title, and no one really knows what's going to happen next.
It's so interesting. I feel like over the years, we've talked so much about urban planning and the developments, that are needed today. I mean, is this considered a success in terms of urban planning, or maybe or a miss on some aspects?
I think that it is by far the most successful master plan city. So, like I mentioned, Irvine, California, it started out as this just like vast plot of inherited land owned by this one family, and was converted into what is a very thriving city. It's the 63rd largest city in America. It's a very expensive place to live now. And so I think on one level, there is no larger master plan city in America. So the fact that this sort of empty space was then converted into such a thriving city is to some a hallmark of success. Then on the flip side, it's also a very exclusive and expensive place to live. And some might say like lacks character in certain key ways, as we alluded to earlier. And so I think that is kind of dependent, but certainly there's no other larger example of a city that was really conceived of from the ground up like this.
The cops drive cyber trucks, Michael.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's kind of like there's a part of it that's like tech utopia and then also tech dystopia. I think it's you see like plenty of other
to that point, you too write about the notion that, yes, there's an Apple store, yes, there's a Capital One cafe, but if you're a local business, you got to follow and play by the rules. What are some of those rules?
Yeah, I mean, I think they really want certain kinds of businesses only, like businesses that they feel are like family friendly in different ways. They also, a lot of stores in Irvine are chain stores or have like locations elsewhere. I think they really like these like bigger stores that already have followings and bring in new people. And also just the way that the contracts are structured is that the Irvine company takes, you have your like maintenance, your base rent, and then a percentage. The Irvine company takes a percentage of revenue from a lot of those business owners. And, they have a lot of control. If you want to open a business in Irvine, you most likely will do it by renting from the Irvine company. And so they have a lot of ability to sort of set those terms.
Well, the history of this development and then this individual who has accumulated so much wealth and how he's been able to stay under the radar is just kind of mind blowing. A great read, incredible read, no doubt about it. So appreciate it. Michael Waters and John Gittleson writing this story for Bloomberg Businessweek on Donald Brennan. Check it out, guys. So interesting. Thanks so much, Michael. So appreciate it. This is Bloomberg.